Well, for more, we're joined by Avi Melamed, head of Inside the Middle East Intelligence Program. He speaks to us from Jerusalem. Thanks for joining us, Avi. I want to begin with a comment this evening by Hassan Nasrallah, speaking, of course, in Lebanon. He's trying to make the point that even though the United States killed Soleimani primarily because of the attacks that he engineered of the Iraqi militias linked to Iran against American targets in Iraq. Nasrallah claiming today that, in fact, Soleimani's death only increased the feelings against the United States in Iraq and perhaps even quickened their withdrawal from Iraq. How do you respond to that? What kind of impact did Soleimani's death have on that situation within Iraq?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, the major impact is that the replacer of Soleimani, General Kani, is struggling to enter Soleimani big shoes. There is accumulative information that indicates that following the killing of Soleimani, the activities of the network of militias operated by the Iranians in Iraq, Hezbollah in Syria and others, is finding more and more difficulties to operate. Soleimani was a very significant component in this whole infrastructure. That was a massive blow in many ways. As for the statements of Mr. Nasrallah, look, they don't need any excuse to express morning and evening their hostility towards the United States. The most important thing to understand is that that was a massive blow. The killing of Soleimani was a massive blow to the Iranian network of armed militias across the region.
Right. Let's focus. You briefly mentioned Syria. That, of course, was the main battleground in recent years between Israel and the forces linked, or in some cases directed by Soleimani. What kind of impact specifically there in Israel's Syria front did his removal have?
Well, let's start from the Israeli angle. It's very simple. Israel is determined to prevent the Iranian plan to establish a military presence along its border, particularly in the Golan Heights. We all understand the meaning of that. The Iranians are planning to deploy network of missiles, rockets, dozens of thousands of militants, Afghans, Iraqis, Lebanese, and local Syrian factors. That presents Israel a serious threat. Israel is determined to prevent that. As we all know, Israel has been operating hundreds of times against targets of Iran, Hezbollah, and their proxies in Syria. By the way, it may be possible that this very evening we had witnessed another attack. The details are not so clear right now. The area of Qusair, the Lebanese-Syrian border, we have to follow these details. Exactly at the same time Nasrallah was making his speech, there has been mysterious explosions in an area that is known to be controlled by the Hezbollah inside the Syrian area. From the Iranian perspective, the Iranians are trying to further entrench their presence in Syria as part of their big vision of creating this land corridor connecting Iran with the Mediterranean, and as part of their big vision to create a strangling loop around Israel's neck. So what we are looking at is that a situation where Syria turns more and more, for the last couple of years, a battling stage between Israel and Iran, Israel and the Iranian proxies, and that probably is continuing to go down the road.
Right. Now, Avi, after Soleimani was killed, Iran and its proxies vowed revenge for his death. They continue to make those vows, but it's been a year. We haven't really seen a kind of escalated incident of the type we've speculated about, even perhaps a terror attack in another part of the world. Why do you think that is? Why do you think Iran and its proxies have not made a specific attack of that type that we've been anticipating yet?
Well, Calev, reminding you all, there has been a sort of like an Iranian retaliation immediately following the killing of Soleimani. There was dozens of rockets and missiles launched from Iran to some Iraqi-based, American-based in Iraq. But indeed, I mean, the Iranian regime is it's not a suicide regime. It's a very cynical and calculated regime. They know to do the math. They are basically trying to find the ways how to, on the one hand, really take revenge in order to keep face. It's important for the Iranian regime. But on the other hand, they do not want to find themselves involved in neither diplomatic nor military quagmire, and particularly as we are right now at the time of zone of Trump administration. So the Iranians are calculating the ways. Potentially they have different strategies or capacities to retaliate. They could use, theoretically, Gaza Strip or Lebanon or Syria as a stage from which they will retaliate. In my evaluation, the odds for that are relatively slim. They could use the Houthis in Yemen to launch yet another attacks on targets in the Red Sea or the Gulf area. Again, I think that the Iranians would be more cautious about it. They would not like to welcome the new administration in the United States with an Iranian-backed Houthi attack on maritime travel, trade and routes in the Red Sea or in the Gulf. I think that probably what the Iranian will try to look for is some kind of like a retaliation that on the one hand would be quite powerful to remind everyone that Iran has the power to retaliate, yet to keep Iran as much as possible immune from a possible counter reaction, either of the United States or the Europeans or the State of Israel. The Iranians have to calculate many things. By the way, Nasrallah's statement basically saying this is an Iranian affair is not something new. His deputy, Naim Qasem, already said it long time ago. He said, following the killing of Soleimani and following, reminding you, the killing of Brigadier General Fakhrizadeh, the top scientist in Iran, he said, this is an inner Iranian affair. This is an affair of honor that the Iranians must take. This is a very clear signal from Hezbollah, at least, that the Hezbollah wish not to be part of any retaliation right now, meaning not using Lebanon as a stage from which a retaliation, an Iranian retaliation, will be launched against Israel. In that context, there is accumulative information. I evaluate that information to be accurate, saying that the leader of Al-Quds Force, General Kani, recently visited Lebanon and basically coordinated with the Hezbollah along the line that the retaliation will not be, if there will be retaliation, will not be launched from Lebanon. Just the same, of course, we'll have to watch it very closely.
Right. Well, obviously, I guess Hezbollah has a lot on its plate domestically in Lebanon, being challenged domestically there within Lebanon, maybe understanding this is not the time for it to do any outside provocations. Avi Melamed of the Middle East Intelligence Program, thank you for joining us on The Rundown.